Guys, on Thursday, the Oklahoma Sooners beat Florida State 5-1 in Game 3 to become 5 times World Series softball champions. NCAA softball has regularly exceeded college baseball television ratings, and this World Series received wall-to-wall coverage, more than I think I've ever seen before for softball World Series. So, Kelly, as our resident softball player, how excited were you to finally see your sport in the spotlight?
Oh, it's long overdue, and it's been in the spotlight for at least 10 years now. They've been airing these games, but like you mentioned, this year by far it was the most it's ever been played. I mean, it was prime time a few nights. It was on ABC once, so it's been really great for the sport, and the viewership is there. I mean, it averaged 1.2 million viewers, 10% increase from 2019, and it had the second largest audience on ESPN since the NFL draft in April. So, and that's competing with the NHL playoffs are going on, the NBA playoffs are going on. So people were watching. I, as a softball player, I always watch. I'm super invested in it. My teammates and I love watching. We know all the girls' names, but I think this year it was the best year to have everyone else in on the drama because oh my God, was it such an exciting series? You had the first perfect game in Women's College World Series history in 21 years with Montana Fouts out of Alabama. You had, like you mentioned, Oklahoma coming in, winning their third in the past 5 years. They have such amazing players in their team. Patty Gasso is awesome. Natty Patty, as some people in the softball world refer to as. But by far, the story of the entire series, of the entire playoffs, was James Madison. James Madison, and more specifically, Odusi Alexander, who threw 1,057 pitches for the Dukes in the Women's College World Series. And she led them to become the first unranked team to advance to the Women's College World Series semifinals by upsetting Oklahoma, number one ranked Oklahoma. So as somebody who plays at a mid-major in Fordham, to see another mid-major have so much success is so exciting, so great for the sport. Not only, for other mid-majors, but the sport in general. I mean, there were so many people who tuned in because they heard about this girl. They saw her viral plays on social media. And so it's such an awesome thing for the sport.
The storyline of James Madison was just incredible. This was such a fun, exciting College World Series. But I want to touch about something Kayla said. Something Kelly said was that the viewership numbers are there because I think there's a lot of people who make the argument I guess against women's sport. Like I don't even know how to describe it, but what they'll say is that no, like people don't want to watch it. But if the College World Series of softball, no, World Series of Poker, College Softball World Series, there we go. If this event has proved anything, it's that those viewership numbers are there. If you air it, people will watch it because it's competitive and it's as good as any sport. It's as exciting as anything. So you look at something like the WNBA, for example. A lot of people will say people just don't want to watch it. But the reason nobody's watching it is because you put it on ESPN2, you put it on ESPN News. What do you expect people to do? If you put it on the main networks, people are going to watch it because it's just as competitive as anything. It's a professional sport. College World Series, it's the best softball players in the country. It bothers me when people say these things because if you put it on the main networks, people are going to watch it because it's as good as anything.
And I hate to agree with you, Dylan, but you're right. I mean, you're right. It competed, the World Series of softball competed, like Kelly was saying, with the NBA and NHL playoffs, and it still managed to maintain a really strong viewership. And I think that just speaks to the fact that a lot of people who are not even like hardcore softball fans are into this. Like, this is something that appeals to everybody. I used to watch the softball world, like tournaments and stuff when it was on like ESPN3 on a Saturday morning sometimes, just like hanging out. But some people are not going to be willing to do that. And I think that by pushing these women collegiate sports to like the margins, you're not really giving them an opportunity to flourish like we know that they can. And I mean, the series was just one that was so incredible to watch. And it was so much fun, and the energy that you could just feel from the players, that you could feel coming off of the television screen. I mean, like, it was incomparable. And so I think that especially by giving them this spotlight, like, I think that this World Series especially has probably changed things for them for the long run, for the future. I think that it has proven that women's softball is something that people want to see. And I think that this is going to give women collegiate softball more of an opportunity to be aired on primetime television and on Sports Center and on ESPN. So I really think that this was something that was such a great and progressive step in women collegiate softball.
I mean, why do people love sports? Why do people watch sports? They watch because of the storylines, right? Sports are their stories, their dramas, their epics, they're funny, they're heartwarming, they're heartbreaking. And I think this is an example of a situation where fans were able to see those storylines unfold. If one game is being aired, every few weeks, or it's not ever in prime time, then fans don't get to know the players. They don't get to know the stories. They can't fall in love with the game like you can with a sport like football or the NBA or even college basketball. That's an example of college sports where, it's a college sport, but people follow it like as if it's a professional team. So I think this was an example where if you give fans the opportunity to fall in love with these athletes, to follow their stories, to learn more about them, it can receive the viewership and it can receive the following that any other major sport would get. And, I think softball is a great example because it, as you mentioned, Kayla, it supersedes college baseball year in and year out. And that's an equivalent sport, a sport that as a softball player, we get compared to all the time as, isn't softball easier than baseball? Isn't the ball bigger? Isn't the field shorter? But it's a different game. It's dramatic. It's fast paced. I mean, that play that went viral with Alexander when she dives and tags the girl out at home, that was everywhere. LeBron James commented on it. Kevin Durant commented on it. These big time players were like, oh, look at this girl doing her thing out there. Look at this. Like, softball is an athletic sport. These girls are athletes. They're competitors. And they're being talked about, finally at an equal level as their male counterparts. And I think there's still a long way to go. I mean, there was a lot of criticism for some of the ways they handled the scheduling. And some of it was rain, it was weather, you can't control that. But they had the championship game was played at 3 p.m. on a Thursday.
Right.
What other major sport is going to have their championship game at 3 p.m. on a Thursday? That doesn't really happen. And then you had some games that would end at 3 a.m. and then the team would have to come less than 12 hours the next day and play again. So, that goes into the whole conversation of almost broader than just softball, but college athletics in general, and getting those equal opportunities as not only men's sports, but also, these are college athletes, but they are basically playing professional athlete schedules. I mean, they're being asked to do the same types of things that professional athletes are being asked of, and to have them, playing without rest, playing at 3 a.m. and coming back the next morning at 2 p.m. Is that okay? Is that right? It seems like they can do better. It seems like as an organization, the NCAA can do better in that regard. But Kayla, like you mentioned, this is definitely a step in the right direction.
Kelly, I really love the way that you put that specifically about why we watch sports. Something I like to say is that the way I'll usually put it is that what we love about sports is that it's this platform to watch human beings be their most self at all times. And there's nothing people want to see more than that, I like to think. And, as we watch an NFL season where, let's say you're a fan of any team. Let's say you're a New Orleans Saints fan, for example. There's so many platforms to talk about the Saints. Every storyline of every player. You feel a personal connection with them. You can have that in college sports as well. My brother goes to Seton Hall. He's the biggest Seton Hall basketball fan in the world. He knows all these players very well. The men's team I'm talking about. When you give women's sports that platform, the same thing is going to happen. It has nothing to do with the size of the ball or how fast someone can run. These are great things we like to see. That's why we love watching. That's why we love watching athletic events. But what we really enjoy about it are those storylines, like you mentioned, Kelly. Those are the things we watch really anything for. Sports is, we watch sports for the same reason we watch movies, for the same reason we watch TV shows, for the same reason we listen to music. These are human beings living their lives and existing. That's the thing that we root for. Yeah.
And I personally fell in love with the Sooners. I know I wanted James Madison because they were the underdogs, but I really did love the Sooners storyline. I mean, it wasn't easy. They were top seeded, but it wasn't like they just walked into the World Series. You know, they had a really tough time getting there. They had to overcome deficits against UCLA. They lost to James Madison in the beginning. They had to beat them twice to try to get there. So I think that, like, just watching these teams, like watching these players work so hard and struggle and try to come up against this and come to the win, that's what I really love to see. And so I like that it wasn't something that was like, oh, the top seeded Oklahoma Sooners just walked right in there and they had kicked butt and it was easy. No, they had to go to game 3. They had to work so hard to get there. They had to overcome a lot. And I think their coach, I think her son was like getting married or something this weekend, and she was like trying to figure out how to get there. And that's what we love. That's what we like. We love the storylines of it, and we love following this. And so I think that is something that came to me this season that, like Kelly said, when I've watched them randomly occasionally, I've never understood it. I never learned about it, never cared enough about the stories because I saw it once a month maybe, you know? But with this tournament, I was able to become like so emotionally invested in the players and in what they're doing and in their personal lives. And that's really all that matters about it.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Oklahoma. James Madison really has stolen the show in this situation, even though they ultimately lost to Oklahoma. But Oklahoma is the fourth ever team to win a national title after losing in the opening round. That is, you're right, that's very difficult to do. And even in that they pushed their final championship series to game 3. Florida State came out and won that first game. So they really had to come together as a team. They really hadn't had a dominant pitcher all series. And then Juarez came out. She was ultimately the MVP of the finals, and she was just dominant. She's a super senior. Her last year, she won that last game 6-2 and was just unbeatable. Jocelyn Allo hit 4 homers in the World Series, including the go-ahead game winner in game 2. So there was just so much big talent in the sport, and it didn't feel like, oh, people are just pushing women's sports on us to watch women's sports. I mean, we were watching talented players. These were great games. These like you mentioned, these weren't blowouts. It wasn't like one team was just walking all over everyone. Almost every game had an element of drama towards the last few innings. So it's just so exciting. And I'm a softball player, so I'm biased, and I think college softball is one of the best avenues to get into women's sports there is. But it shouldn't just stop with college softball. You know, college soccer, the women's professional soccer, the women's team, you know, they had an exciting game. They just won against Portugal, and the Olympics are coming up. But other sports,
40th straight win, you know, that's a big deal.
Exactly. And women's basketball for a long time now has been pushing for more viewership. And I think at the professional and college level, that should increase as well, because I think softball is just the beginning for women's sports in terms of a model where putting out more games, giving people more content was effective.